Welcome to the Depth Dive. Today, we're cutting through the complexity to get right to the heart of how our bodies are put together. Our topic is structural organization and homeostasis.
Mhm.
And this isn't just about listing parts. We're taking our source material and distilling it down, giving you a really clear, well-informed view of, how your body is built and, crucially, how it keeps everything in balance.
Exactly. And for those of you familiar with AMP basics, we want to go a step further today. It's about understanding why these ideas matter so much, how they work together in this, well, this constant silent miracle inside you. Really appreciating the amazing engineering that keeps us all going second by second.
Okay, so let's unpack this. A good starting point is the language itself. It's fascinating how many terms in anatomy and physiology actually come from Greek or Latin stems. Knowing them is it's almost like having a secret decoder ring. Think about cyto for cell, bi or di, meaning two, hyper for more, hypo for less. Itis always means inflammation, myo is muscle, osteo is bone. It gives you a real head start, even with complex terms. But beyond the words, what are the two big sciences we need to get our heads around here, and why are they so well linked?
Right, that's actually fundamental. You've got anatomy, which is really the study of structure. What parts are there, what they look like, where they are. And then you have physiology, which is all about function. How do these parts actually work? How do organisms do what they do? And the deep dive insight here is that, well, you can't really understand one without the other. They're totally intertwined.
Yeah.
Well, think about the heart. You can't grasp how it functions as a pump, its physiology, without knowing its four-chamber structure, its anatomy, or if someone has a faulty heart valve that's an anatomical problem,
Yeah.
it directly impacts their blood pressure, which is physiology. So structure dictates function, and often function influences structure over time, too. They're inseparable, really.
That makes perfect sense. That connection is where it all comes alive, isn't it? Okay, so if we understand that link, the next thing is scale. How we look at the body from, the big picture down to the tiniest detail. We can start big with gross anatomy, right? Sometimes called macroscopic anatomy. That's the stuff you can actually see, large structure.
Hmm. With the naked eye.
Exactly. And even within that, there are different approaches like surface anatomy, looking at the outside, figuring out what's underneath the skin. And then systemic anatomy, which looks at how groups of organs work together, like the skeletal system, all the bones, joints, ligaments as one functional unit.
Right. And then we zoom right in. We go microscopic. That's where microscopic anatomy comes in. Looking at things you absolutely need a microscope to see, like cells and molecules. This breaks down further into cytology, the study of cells. Remember, cyto means cell, and their internal structures.
Mm.
And histology, which is the study of tissues, groups of similar cells working together.
So it's like layers of understanding from what we can see and touch down to the cellular level.
Precisely. It gives us that complete picture. And just like anatomy has its specialties, so does physiology. We can talk about cell physiology, looking at processes inside cells or between them. Or organ physiology, focusing on how a specific organ, like the kidney or the liver, does its job. Then there's systemic physiology, which examines the function of an entire organ system, like the cardiovascular or nervous system. And a really important one is pathological physiology. That's studying how diseases mess with normal function. Hugely important for medicine, obviously.
It really paints a picture of how interconnected everything is, from the tiniest chemical reaction to the whole organism. And that actually brings us nicely to the body's building blocks. This hierarchical organization, it's quite elegant, really. There are 6 levels of structural organization, and they get progressively more complex. You start at the bottom with the chemical level. We're talking atoms, molecules, things like proteins.
Very basic building materials.
Exactly. Then those chemicals organize into the cellular level. Now you have actual cells, the basic units of life, often specialized, like a nerve cell or a muscle cell. Groups of similar cells then team up to form the tissue level, muscle tissue, connective tissue, and so on. Then, different types of tissues join forces to create an organ, like the stomach or the brain. That's the organ level. Keep going up, and you get organs working together in the system level, like the digestive system. And finally, all those systems working together make up the complete organism. A whole living being, us.
Well, it's a beautiful hierarchy. And what's really key is how each level builds upon the one below it. Specialization and combination at each step create the complexity of the next level up. And it also shows how vulnerable things can be. A tiny problem at the chemical level, maybe a faulty protein, can potentially cause issues all the way up the chain. Cell, tissue, organ, maybe even affect the whole organism's health. It shows both resilience and, well, potential fragility.
Okay, so we have this amazing structure organized across multiple levels. But how does it all run, where does the energy come from? That takes us to metabolism.
Ah, yes, the body's engine room.
Pretty much. Metabolism is basically the sum total of all the chemical reactions happening in your body's cells and tissues. And you can break it down into two main processes. First, there's anabolism. Think of this as the building up part, synthesizing new molecules, making things the body needs, like building muscle protein. And this process uses energy. It's an investment.
Right. Building requires energy. And the flip side is catabolism. That's the carrying down part. This is where complex molecules get broken down, like when your body breaks down glucose from food. And this process releases energy. That's the energy the body uses for everything, including anabolism.
So it's a constant cycle, building up, breaking down.
Exactly. Anabolism and catabolism are happening all the time in this dynamic balance, managing the body's energy budget, you could say. It powers everything.
And that idea of balance, of keeping things stable, that leads perfectly into maybe the most critical concept of all, homeostasis. How would you define that simply?
Homeostasis is fundamentally the body's ability to maintain a stable internal environment, despite changes happening outside or even inside. It's this constant striving for physiologic balance, keeping things like temperature, blood sugar, pH within a very narrow optimal range.
And it's absolutely vital, right? The source material stresses that failure to maintain homeostasis can lead to disease or worse.
Absolutely. It can lead to death.
Yeah.
Think about it. If your body temperature went way up and stayed there, or your blood sugar crashed too low, systems would start to fail. So maintaining this balance isn't just ideal, it's essential for survival.
Okay, so how does the body do it? What's the mechanism behind this constant balancing act?
Well, it's primarily managed through really sophisticated communication systems, mainly the nerve-based and hormonal control systems. And these systems typically rely on three core components working together. First, you need a receptor or a sensor. This detects a change, a stimulus like, say, your skin detecting cold. It then sends out a signal.
Okay, so it senses the change, then what?
That signal goes to the control center, often part of the brain or spinal cord. The control center basically knows the desired set point, like the ideal body temperature. It analyzes the information from the receptor and decides what needs to be done.
It's like the thermostat.
It's exactly like a thermostat. And then the control center sends instructions to the third part, the effector. The effector is usually a muscle or a gland. It carries out the response designed to counteract the original change. So if the stimulus was cold, the effectors might be muscles starting to shiver to generate heat.
Receptor, control center, effector. Got it. And these systems use specific tools, right? Feedback mechanisms. These seem really important.
Super important. They're the how of homeostasis.
Yeah.
And there are two main types. By far the most common is negative feedback.
Negative feedback. What does that mean?
It means the response triggered by the system opposes or reduces the original stimulus. Once the desired balance is restored, the system shuts itself off or at least dials down the response. Think temperature again. You get hot, you sweat, the response. Sweating cools you down. Once you're cool enough, the sweating stops. The response canceled out the stimulus.
Okay, so it brings things back to normal and then stops. Makes sense. What's the other type?
The other type is positive feedback. And this one is quite different. Instead of opposing the stimulus, positive feedback amplifies it, pushes it further away from the starting point.
That sounds potentially dangerous if it just keeps amplifying.
It would be if it were widespread. That's why positive feedback is actually quite rare in the body and only happens in very specific situations where you need a rapid escalation to complete a process. The classic examples are blood clotting. You need the clot to form quickly and strongly to stop bleeding, and the contractions during childbirth. The contractions get stronger and stronger to push the baby out.
Ah, okay. So it's not for maintaining balance day to day, but for achieving a specific, often urgent endpoint.
Precisely. Once the endpoint is reached, the clot forms, the baby is born, the positive feedback loop stops. So negative feedback is the workhorse of stability, while positive feedback is for rapid completion of specific events.
Right. So wrapping up homeostasis then. It's this essential state of equilibrium, this balance, and our physiological systems are constantly adjusting, using mostly negative feedback, sometimes positive, to keep everything running smoothly within that narrow range. And, as we've said, if that balance breaks down, that's when disease can take hold, or worse. Wow, okay, we've covered a lot of ground there. From the very language of anatomy and physiology, those Greek and Latin roots, through the incredible levels of organization, from chemicals right up to us, and then into how the body powers itself with metabolism and keeps everything stable through homeostasis and feedback loops. Hopefully this deep dive gives you, our listener, a really solid, informed shortcut to understanding these fundamental mechanics of your own body. More than just facts, but the why behind them.
Absolutely. And maybe a final thought to leave you with, just take a moment to consider how truly remarkable it is. Right now, as you're listening, your body is performing this incredibly complex symphony. Billions of cells organizing, communicating, regulating temperature, energy fluids, all without you consciously directing any of it. It's this constant silent miracle of self-organization and precise balance, adapting every single second to keep you alive and well. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other layers of complexity are still out there waiting to be understood?